Hello guys, and welcome to the Unity scripting portion of my YouTube channel. This portion is going to be dedicated to learning how to script. This is going to be for beginners to advanced level. What I'm going to be doing is coming up with at least one tutorial a week, or maybe two. It depends on how busy I am with my other tutorial series and my own projects. So with that said, these tutorials are for people that want to get comfortable scripting. So we're going to start from like really low and build up on that knowledge and go up. So today what we're going to be doing is we want to look into script execution, and then we want to be able to learn how to change our IDE to something that we want for our script editor. Also, we want to talk about game loops, right? And we want to do our hello world program here that actually brings hello world to this console. All right, so the first thing we want to do is actually look at changing our editor. So to change your editor to something that you want, like Atom, or you want to change it to Notepad++, or you want to change it to something that you want. I don't know what people's favorite this thing there, but most of the time I use Visual Studio Code, or I use IntelliDare IDEs. So what I'm going to be using is I'm going to be using Writer, JetBrains Writer. But to change this, what you do is go to Edit, go to Preferences, and then you can go to External Tools, and then you click here, and by default you should have it as Visual Studio. What you can do is you can browse to find something that you're on your machine that you're currently using and use that. So it's up to you, but it has to be an exe or an img for Mac. I think I don't use Macs, but all of the projects that I am doing here should work with Mac computers. So I'm going to be using Writer, but this is how you change your IDE. So with that said, we need to create a script folder to hold our scripts. So go to folder here. So we're going to right click, create folder, and then we're going to call this scripts. Okay. And this plugin folder here is for Writer. Writer does this. It creates plugins for us. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and create an active game object that we can attach our script to. So by Unity standards, our scripts only run if they're attached to an object within our scene. So what we can do is we can create an empty game object in the scene by going to game object, create empty, or we can right click here and go to create empty here. So we're just going to create an empty object, and when you create an empty object, it's gonna, the inspector here is going to open up, and then you're going to have your game object name, the tag, the layer. All right, so you can change the layer, what layer it's on. And then it comes with this transform here. So the transform tool is used to translate the object, which means to move it. So if we went ahead here and we increase this value, you can see that we can go left and right on the x-axis. So I'm going to go back in here and just kind of reset that, so everything's back to 0, 0. And then we can scale the object here if we increase the size of it. But since this object is empty, there is not a mesh on it, and that's why you can't really see if we're scaling it or not. So I'm going to go ahead and still reset that. So what I want to do here is we want to change the name of the object to script. All right. And then what we want to do is we want to go inside of our scripts folder and create a script called hello world. It's going to be a C# script, and I'm going to call it hello world. So what we want to do here is take a look at the execution order for event functions. So since our script inherits some stuff from mono behavior, we have some predefined methods that Unity creates that's done in that library that we can use inside of our classes, and most of our code are called inside of these functions, all right, or methods, or however you call them. Since I go in between Java and C#, I often kind of mess up things. Like in Java, you only create methods with like starting with small cases, while in C# you use upper cases. So I get confused sometimes. But what we do is we have some methods that are given to us. For example, you can use onAwake, you can use onEnable or start to initialize variables, right? And you can use fix update or on triggers for so these are for physics, right? So on mouse or for input, and then yield game logic. So you can use this one to make things wait for a certain amount of time, and then you keep going. And then we have some other stuff here for rendering and stuff. And then on Gizmo, on Gu for rendering things like buttons and other things. And then we have other stuff pretty much on disable, on destroy, and all that stuff, or on application quit. And we can call this functions, right, when something happens within our game object or within our games. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead here and open up our script and start writing our program. All right. And if you have any questions, you guys can always look at the documentations for answers. For the reason, like what we did today was pretty much just look at the first part, creating a script and using scripts. That's pretty much it. And that gives information about the awake, start, and stuff like that. But you see that when we create our first script, you can see on the right side that it gives us some information. So first thing that we do is we have our class, and then this colon in the middle means inheritance in C#, and we're inheriting some things from mono behavior, right? And what we're inheriting here are this start and update functions in here. And then we have some imports here at the top. So to open up our actual script, what we're going to do is we're going to double click on the file name, and when we double click on it, it's going to go ahead and open that up inside of our IDE, our programming IDE or script IDE. Alright, and this is what you get pretty much. You get that signature that you saw earlier with the imports here. So one thing that I don't like about Rider is that on start it starts inspecting things, and you see something like redundant Unity event functions. So what I want to do, I want to go ahead and remove that. So I'm going to click on it and go to this little thing right here, and I'm going to go here and go to disable once with comments, and I want to disable it for the class. So it's going to go ahead here and just suppress the reshaper for a second. So what we want to do first is we need to create some regions to actually hold some of our variables. And the reason why regions are good is because you can always collapse them. Right, so I'll create region here, and I'll call this private variable. So private variables, and so what I want to do is I want to create a space here. And what it's going to do is I'm going to go ahead here and create a serialized field here. And hopefully this time I can use tooltips here, and this is going to be to say string to pass in information to be printed. So this is just going to give us when we put our mouse on top of the variable name, it's going to give us a tooltip. So a tooltip pretty much is like a message about what that variable does, or something like that. So what I want to do here is create an actual variable of type string, right? And I'm going to call this content. All right, so what I want to do next is I actually want to make this bigger, and I'll just close this here. All right, so we can see more. And since we're not going to be using these two imports here, I'm going to take them off. All right, so now that we have that here, what we can do now is we can create a method that we can use to print out our content, right? And so what we need to do is we need to go here, and we create a private static void, and we can say print content. All right, and what we want to do, we want to go ahead and pass in a string, and I'm going to call this content. And then what we want to do is we want to use debug. So debug.log, is going to be used to actually print the content. All right. And the way that we see our debugs are through this console tab right here. All right. So the console tab, what it does is that if we have any errors in our script, it will show up here. And if we have any messages inside of our project of our scripts, it's going to show up here as well. So what we're going to do next is go back to our script. All right. So for us to call this, so what this does is this is called for initialization. So this is going to run first. But what I want to do is I want to change this to awake, because awake is guaranteed to be called before start. All right. So I'm going to say awake, and I'm going to make this private. So I'm going to make this private here. Okay, so what we can do here is that we can go ahead here and call our print here, and then we can pass in underscore content, right? And that's going to go ahead and print once. But let's say, for example, that if content is null, then we're not really printing out anything, right? So what we can say, we say if underscore content not equal to null. So now we're saying that if that is not equal to null, go ahead and print out the content here. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and save this, and we can go back into our game, into Unity, and go into our project scene, project tab, and make sure that we drag this script and drop it on the actual object. All right. Because remember that scripts only run on top of active objects. If they're not active on an object, it will not run. So let's go ahead here and take this back out. So I'm going to remove this component. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead here and just hit run. And you guys are going to see that nothing happens. If I go under the console, nothing happens. There is nothing there. All right. If I go under a script object here, there's nothing added there, and we have just the remaining other objects inside of the scene, and nothing goes on. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back, and I'm going to drag this script, and I'm going to drop it here, and now we have something. So now we have that content private variable that we passed in here that was serialized. So we can go ahead here and see that on the tooltip here, when we put our mouse over it, it says string to pass in information to be printed. So what I want to pass in here, we want to pass in hello world. All right. And now when I go and I hit play and I go into the console view, you can see that it prints out hello world here. And now we have hello world printed. All right. So this tutorial would be fun like this, but just doing this doesn't really teach you guys anything. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead here and show you guys how to do other things, right? So what I want to do is go under script here, and I'm going to create a child object for the script object. All right, this is used for a lot of different concepts inside of Unity. So I'm going to go ahead and create a 3D text, and I'm going to call this text. All right. Okay. So now is we have this text object, which is a child of script, because if I close script, if I collapse this, you can see that we just have script, and if I do that, you can see the child object inside of the script is called text. All right, and this is what text does. So text right here has a text value, and it has other things for like spacing, fonts, color, and all that good stuff. All right, so now this is an object that shows up inside of our scene, and if we go into game and we hit that, you can see that we have a text here that says hello world. And what we can do here is we can change this hello world to do something, right? Or we can change the text here. So if we change the text here, erase it and say by the ocean. All right, it says by the ocean. All right. But what we want to do is we want to be able to change this to a script. All right, you want to be able to change this to a script and make it do something. All right, so what I want to do here is we want to go ahead and instead of changing it manually, we want to write a script that we can use to change that. All right. So what we're going to do is go back into our code here, and what we need first is we need to actually create an object of that text mesh. All right. So what we need to do now is go ahead here and create another serialized field here, and I'm gonna call this private, and then I'm gonna call it, it's gonna be this text mesh, and I'm gonna call it underscore text. All right, so now we have a variable here, and now is that what we want to do is we want to go ahead here and actually initialize this variable with the child object that we created under script here. So we need a way to access that. All right, and Unity has a way for us to actually access that. So to access that, what we're going to do is we're going to say underscore text equals to, and then what we want to do is we want to get component, because since this script is actually attached to the parent, right? So what we can do is we can get that component in the child. So we can say we want to get component in child, and what component do we want to get? We want to get the text mesh component. All right, and this is why game programming is a little bit more different than creating software, because typically we don't, until I started doing game development, I really didn't see using things like this. But then when I finally started learning how to use things like that, it really blew my mind out. All right, so now we have this text mesh component. Now we fill in that text here. All right. So what we can do is we can just say, we can check here, say if underscore text equal to null, right? Then we can just go ahead here and fill that out. If it's not, then we don't really care, right? So now what we can do is we can create a method that we can now pass in a text, right, to this text right here. So let's go ahead here and create another static void variable, and we're gonna call this change text. All right, and what change is going to take is going to take in a text mesh. All right, and I'm going to call this mesh, and it's going to take in a string for the content. So say content. All right, so what we want to do is we want to set the text to the content. So I'm going to say mesh dot text equal to content, right? Because we need that content is going to be a string, and now we have that set. So now is we can come here to our start our wake function here. Since that's called before anything else, we can now call this change text, and then we can pass in our underscore text here because that's the mesh, and then we can pass in content here because that's our string. So we'll go underscore content. All right, so now when we go into our scene, for example, let me save this. All right, let's go back to our game or scene, and let me bring this back out. I'm going to clear this. So now what we want to do, this text is empty, so what we want to do is we want to go back to our script here, and we want to change this to cooking food or something. All right, and now this is not being set. This text variable now is not set, but once I hit play, you can see that it's going to fill this out with this text, and we saved it as text here, so you can see that this text here is what is being filled in here. All right, and if we go now to this text word here, it says cooking food. That's because that we took our current string that we had here and we passed that information to cooking food. All right, this is cool and all, right? But this is kind of blurry, and this is not something that you would learn off of like Unity or something like that. The reason why this is blurry is because of the size of the actual object here is too big. So what I want to do here is put this to like 0.2. I think this is at 0.2. This is stuff that I learned from experience, just like using this stuff. So if we went back now and look at it, it's a little smaller. So what we can do is we could up the font size now, and you guys can see that it looks a lot a lot better. It's not blurry anymore. And this is stuff that I learned just tweaking 3D text mesh. So what we want to do now is we want to go ahead here and set that value. So we're going to set this value to 90, okay, for the font size here, the front for this thing. And now when we do that, it looks really good. One thing that I want to do now is I want to go to the camera and I want to change it from skybox to solid color, and I want to make it completely black. So that way everything kind of pops out and it looks a lot better that way. Now this looks, voila, superb. Okay, with games you have to make sure that they actually look good. So now that we have that, it would be nice if we can also change the color, right? So what I want to do is show you guys how to use color picker with this. And I get that this tutorial is going to be long, so if you want to just skip to the parts that you need to be at, it doesn't matter to me. So what we want to do is we want to actually create a color picker for this. All right. So what I'm going to do is go back into our text editor here, and what I want to do is I want to create another region. So I'm going to go here and just right click on this and go to folding, and I want to collapse everything. So this is why doing regions are really good. And what I want to do next is I want to go ahead here and create another region. So I'm going to say region, and I'm going to do this as public variable. All right, and I'll add that space down in there. So what we need here is we need to get we want to actually create a color picker, right? So what we're going to do here is go ahead and say, you know what, let's just do a tooltip for now. This is going to be a color picker. All right, and we're going to create a color. All right, and now we have that here. What we can do now is we can create another method that probably just takes in, we could take in a color, and we could take in a text mesh here, and then we could change that color, right? So the text mesh actually has a color property that we can see down here. So it does have the color property here, and that's what we're trying to change. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and change that property. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create another private static method, void change color. All right, and that's going to take in text mesh, and I'm going to call this mesh, and color. I'm going to call this color. All right, so now that we have that, we can say that text, oh actually, so mesh dot, dot color equals to color. All right, and you can see that when we say color, we can see different types of color come up, right? And sometimes you want to leave comments, so this one, just do a brings content to console. There, set text on text mesh, and this one is going to change text mesh color. Okay, so now that we have that, what we want to do here is we want to go ahead here and actually pass in our change color. So change color, and what we need is we need our underscore text here, right? And then we need our color, which is what we're going to be passing in. So now that we have that set up, we can go into our into Unity and see what's going on there. So let's go to Unity for a second and let's run it. For some reason it's not showing, right? I'm gonna go over here and try to change things. I can't even do it instead of the default for some reason. I'm gonna go into our script here, and I see that we do have our color picker here. It's working fine, but there's something wrong with this. All right. The reason is because the alpha here, it's set to 0. Right. So when we do this, the alpha is set to 0, so we can't really see much. Let's see. Okay, so nothing is showing. All right. So now it's our job to figure out exactly what's wrong with this stuff. So we have to figure it out. So we start debugging. So you have two options. You can either go online and do a lot of online stuff, or let's run this again and see what's happening. So this stuff does work, and if we look here, the alpha is set to 0. But if I were to go ahead now and kind of push the alpha up, you can see that we do have cooking in black, right? And the default color shown here is black. But if I were to change this now, you can see that this is actually working. So for some reason, when we set in the color, the alpha here is 0. So what we need to do is we need to figure out how to set the alpha to 255, all right, or somewhere in between that, right? So this is something that I learned by experience, creating color picker scripts. All right. So what we need to do is we need to go back into our code, right? And before we actually go ahead and change this, what we need to do is we have to pick something here. So what we do is we can create a public variable, right? So we're gonna go ahead and do a tooltip, and this would be to change alpha, all right, or change color alpha. And this is gonna be, you know what, let's just make this, let's make this a float. So I'll say public float alpha equals to 1f. All right, and I'm going to make this underscore here. So next, what I want to do before we actually set the color is that on awake, what we can say is that we can say color dot a, which is for alpha, equals to alpha, or underscore alpha here. All right, and now what the alpha is going to do is that it's going to set this alpha to 1, which is going to be 255 here. So next, one thing we want to do is that we want to go ahead and save everything, and then we want to go back here and run this. All right, so now we can see cooking here, cooking food here. It's kind of dull, but you can still see it. And what we want to do here is set the color to white and not to black. So right after we do that, what we want to do now is we want to say, okay, color equals color dot white. All right, so now we're going to change the default color to white and save all. And then what we need to do is run things again and see what the changes are. And we can see now that we have the text showing the right way, the right color. And if I were to go back into our actual script here and change the color, you guys can see that it doesn't really really work, right? You can't really change the color at runtime here. You can only change the color before. So what we want to do is we want to change it. So if you want things that actually run you can use during the runtime, that will go into our update method, because the update runs every frame, right? While the awake runs before the script runs when the script starts. So what we want to do is we want to change everything and put that inside of the update frame. All right. So what we want to do here is we want to go back inside of our editor here and go inside of update. And what now we want to do is we can just say, well, if, because this is going to throw an error, so we're going to say if content, right, is equal to null, then we don't want you to change anything. We just want you to go ahead here and return. All right. Or what we can do here is that we can change. So we're going to do a text change, and then what we're going to do is we want to pass in our text, and then we want to go also and pass in the content. All right. So what we're saying is that we can change the text now, and also what we want to do is we want to also change the color. So what we need is we need our text, and then we need to pass in color, and voila. I think I'm gonna stop this here, and let's go ahead and see what we can do now. So if we go back into Unity here and we run our actual scene here. Now if I went to our content and I said, hey there, okay, now that changes. And if I were to go into our color and I start changing stuff, you can see that I can literally start messing up things in here at runtime, right? And that would change it as the game is actually running, right? And I could still tweak that alpha here as well. So you can see that I can do that, and that works as well. All right. And yeah, so this would be it for this tutorial. I know that these tutorials are going to be like hefty. There is no like easy short way for me to like really just explain things. So I want to like take the long way so that everybody can learn. So if you kind of want to just like go through everything like really fast and you just want access to the code, I'm going to have it online on GitHub so you can access that over there. I hope you guys actually enjoy spending 30 minutes of your time watching this. Let me know under the comments below how you feel about this tutorial, and if you want me to keep making more. I'll see you guys later on. Bye bye.